Yo guys, what's up? Today we're going to be doing a tutorial on making some swamp base. It's kind of a mangrove overgrown swamp environment. We use this on a Tyrannid army, but it's a great thing to put onto just one miniature, maybe a showcase mini or a large centerpiece model of your army. Looks fantastic on a full unit, but if you apply this basing scheme to an entire army, it looks phenomenal, as you can see here. So this basing scheme is how we did the Tyrannids for our Streamiversary event, which was a 2-day event celebrating our 2nd anniversary for the stream. If you want to copy that scheme, then here's exactly how you do it. First off, you're going to need some Vallejo earth texture. This is much better and more cost effective than the similar GW products. About 40 quid less for the same volume, so definitely worth picking up. Get an old brush, pick up some of that, and then start applying that to the base that you've got. As you can see from this, we've got a really old base. It's had a bit of use, but we're going to cover a lot of that up using this pumice. Once you've got that on there, what you're looking to do is spread it all out, get it all over the base, make sure there's every little nook and cranny of that covered, and then you can start shaping your crate. And this is the really fun bit. Basically, just spoon on a load more of this pumice, and then start shaping up the side. So using like a shoveling motion, sort of push it underneath with your brush, start teasing up little bits of it, and you'll get there in no time at all. You're going to need to let this dry for quite some time though. So whereas you might be used to using this product and having it dry in only a couple of hours tops, for this you really want to leave it overnight. And then we'll carry on with the rest of the base over the course of this video. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, like, comment and subscribe. I love hearing your comments. We've had some really good feedback recently as well, so thank you very much for those people. You know who you are. And there you have it. You keep constructing your base until you've got this nice cratered shape. You can kind of come back to it here and there if you need to touch up little bits or fill in some like smaller areas that might have a little bit of a dip in them. But leave this to dry, like I said, for at least 24 hours. Once it's dry, it will look something a little bit more like this. It looks a little bit sad in this photo. But what you need to do is just make sure you've let it fully cure. It's the inside that needs to be dry, not the outside. Remember that. Once that's done, give it a good undercoat, and then I've sprayed this with Rhinox hide to give myself a nice dark brown. It's still got kind of a warmth and richness to it from some reds that are in there in the makeup of the paint for our forest floor, kind of swamp floor effect. Now we're using some instant base scatter with some Rival Craft stuff. This stuff is fantastic. It's a mix of things like coconut bark, little bits of broken up sort of various trees and roots and so on. We've got some PVA mixed with H2O, just literally glue and water. Use some decent quality glue. It's going to have a little bit better stick to it, and we are of course diluting it here. Put it into a little bottle for ease of application, and here's exactly where you can see we're just sort of using that bottle to apply it all the way around our base. Once we've got good coverage on there, we're just going to take that instant base scatter, dump it straight in there, pick up loads of that all around the edge, tap off any excess, and then the next thing you know, this is the start of our swamp base. Next job is to, of course, paint an entire Carnifex. Wait, what? Paint a whole Carnifex? Here's why. Over the course of this video, we're going to be using a lot of products from Rival Crafts. You can see here we've already used that forest floor instant base scatter foliage, and for me they're one of the best companies out there. They're a UK company, which I personally like because I like supporting people that live within my own country, but they do some great stuff like these bonsai trees. Now you can just go out looking for sticks, you can dry them thoroughly, like just put them in the oven for a little bit on low, careful, you know. The amazing grass tufts that they do as well. They can get these in any size up to about 6mm, and these preserved ferns. Now these are the only guys that I know of that stocked this particular fern. Now I have pretty much bought every single part of it, and they may not get any back in stock for a while, but all of these preserved kinds of foliage, the asparagus ferns, there's different blooms, there's blossoms, and Sarah, the person behind Rival Crafts, has just opened up a huge set of extra stock for these sorts of things. So there's going to be a lot more coming up very soon. So definitely something to check out. I will put links in the description below so you can go and check them out. We even have a discount code for it as well. So definitely well worth it. Also, don't forget though, any sort of hobby product isn't necessarily all you need. So just some random 4-inch house painting brushes somehow made it into this video, along with these UV resins. Now this particular UV resin is really cheap. It's from Amazon. It's about 20 quid for 250 grams, whereas the Green Stuff World stuff is about £7.50 for 30 grams. The differences are that the cheaper stuff sets over a longer time, and we can use that to fill all the bigger gaps. We're going to be using these pipettes to do that. The Green Stuff World stuff sets with this torch pretty instantly. You can almost use it like glue, and you'll see how we use that later in the video. So when I was looking at this bonsai tree, I noticed this area here between these two places. We're going to snip this out with a pair of snippers carefully, but you will use a little bit of force. What I want to do is kind of create a sort of rising, sunken tree branch. Now, this one was still a little bit too big, so we snip that right down again. You can just use a little bit of force. Careful, make sure you've got a good pair of clippers to do this. Make sure it fits. Excellent. We'll be coming back to that later on. I also saw a couple of nice little bits of tree on here. We've got these little offshoots. We're going to need those later on, so we've put those carefully off to one side but cleaned up this branch. And now we've got most of the little smaller side branches off of that. We're just going to have a quick look to see what this looks like stood next to our Carnifex around the back of the base. Now I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so full disclosure, I forgot to put my gloves on before filming this. Now, when you're using resin, especially stuff like this, but any kind of resin really, it is very important you protect yourself. So wear some nitrile gloves or whatever else you've got to cover up your hands every single time you're using it. Also work in a very well ventilated area. Both patio doors were open whilst making this video, and we were wearing our 3M respirator. This thing is really, really good, and it keeps all of the harmful shit out. But it is very important that you do ensure you're wearing these things. Later on in the video, I realized my mistake, and I do put gloves on. You'll see why at that point, because it goes all over my hands. But definitely protect yourself. This stuff isn't particularly friendly. Do make sure you're wearing it. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a big boo-boo for me making this video without that part, but make sure you're wearing it, you'll be fine. So what you see me do here is apply some resin to the bottom of our branch, apply some around it to help set it in, and use that torch to really set it onto our base. Next up, we're going to start making some foliage to go alongside it. So I've got this asparagus fern. We're arranging this in kind of a clump. And what we're going to do is we're going to sort of bring all these together. We're going to set these in place with some resin, and again, we're going to use that to go onto our base. Now, we could have used super glue. However, this is the quickest and easiest way to get all of these things sorted out. Because it sets so quickly, that Green Stuff World resin, it's almost like an instant bond. Now, I appreciate super glue is as well, but this really encases everything in resin. Once we've got these set up, we're going to snip off the bottoms to make sure they're all the right length, everything comes together at one point. Then we're going to use that resin, and this is why it's so good, because like I said, it encases it in resin. So all of the roots, the bottom areas of all of these bits of fern are going to be stuck together and held together as well. Once that's done, you'll just be able to do whatever you want with it. Obviously here we're making swamp bases, but this is a technique I've used for doing things like adding barbed wire to bases and so on. Once we've got that set and cured, we've got our solid clump. We're going to put some more UV resin down on the base of our Carnifex, pop it back in there, use that torch again and set it down and glue it. Now we're going to use this technique for lots of the preserved ferns that we've got in the video, and as well for other things, and you'll have to see how that goes in a minute. But for now, I'd really like to talk to you guys about how we can do other things in other videos, and by that, of course, I mean Patreon and Twitch. For those that don't know, I stream 4 times a week on Twitch, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Sundays from 9 PM BST currently in the UK, and Saturdays at 11 AM. We do a load of giveaways, as well as have a lot of fun where we can answer your questions and get them all done on stream as well. We'd also like to thank the following Patreons: Deadrock, Abdul, Masawa, Warich, Mali Lines Diamond, Andrew Evans, Weird Boy, Rihanna Roddle and Nerdachino. All of these guys have been instrumental, come in real clutch over on Patreon, helping keep the lights on. I mean that literally. So thank you all very much, guys. Remember, we do have an extra video every other week on Patreon, as well as written guides every single week as well, for those of you like a written PDF example on how to do what we've been doing here. So now it's time to use that house brush. Now, what we're going to do here is take a big sort of bundle of the fibers for it, snip those off. And in exactly the same way that we've done with our preserved ferns, we're going to take some of that liquid resin, we're going to put it on the ends, encase those in that resin, glue them all together, make one solid end to that. And then we go back to our base, use some more resin to hold that in place, glue it down, and then bam. Next thing you know, you've got some pretty passable reeds. So we're getting lots of variation into our mangrove swamp on here. This is exactly what we want. Let's go back to this thing. So we've got this little U-shaped bit of wood. What we're going to do now is going to make a bundle of these ferns, the tree ferns, in exactly the same way we did before, but instead of encasing the bottom of them, and notice now we're wearing that glove, We're going to bend them over the branch, and we're going to use the resin to hold them on top of the branch. I want this to look like some kind of water weed that's grown up out of the swamp, or it's something that's been on the log and a log shifted where something stood and it's come up and it's looking wet and horrible. That's why it's covered in resin all over the top. We're using a cocktail stick to help us get everything into place. We really want to make sure that we've got that kind of almost curtain-like shape to this. So with a little bit of, frankly, some brute force, and this is something I'd never tried before, so it's been a little bit of a learning experience. We've got that in place, we're using that torch, we're setting everything there. We took our time with this step to ensure that that was fully set, and when it was, here's what we've got. Next we need to do is snip off the bottom ends of all of that stuff there, so get that all down kind of fairly flush, and there we have our overgrown log coming up out of the water. So this I'm really happy with. We're going to put this on our base in exactly the same techniques we already have. So we're going to get some of that UV resin, we're going to apply it to the bottoms of both of these areas. Once that's done, we can get this over onto the miniature, get it nice and solid, glued in on what we've got there, using exactly the same techniques we've used already. And once it's on there, fantastic. We can reinforce it a little bit more if we want to, but otherwise, that's kind of it. We're going to get those little bits that we snipped off before. Remember I said I wanted to use those for something, but we're just literally pushing those into the pumice on the base. It has dried, but it's still soft enough to allow that. We've got a nice little extra bit of foreground, just sticking up there in front of that kind of effect. So that's all that part. Let's get to the next step. For this, we're going to need to use the UV resin. Now, we're using the cheaper stuff, and we're using probably about 10 mils of this in a shot glass. The entire reason that we're doing it with this resin is this is much cheaper by volume. We use this to fill up the big pool areas. We're then using some Liquitex muted green ink, but you can use any dark green or blue ink. You can use anything you want. You can make like purple pools if you really want. I'm just using 3 small drops of that, and we're going to mix it all together with a cocktail stick, ensuring it's thoroughly mixed throughout. Once we've got that sorted out, then we're ready to start using a pipette, and we can put all this onto the base. You could just free pour it, but frankly, for the amount that these pipettes cost, you can get them cheaply enough off of Amazon. It's well worth doing it with this. Make sure you've got that control, and that you don't want to just sort of pour this all over your miniature. You might have just spent hours upon hours upon hours painting, and resin pours have the potential to go very wrong anyway. So do make sure that you've got all the right bits and pieces to help you out with your quest to getting these swamp bases done. So using that pipette, we're going to start putting down a thin layer of this, and it is worth noting you should work in thin layers. When this stuff sets, it won't bubble very much unless you've put bubbles into it, but the setting process for it does generate heat. So get a thin layer of this all over, set one layer at a time with that torch, and then once you're done, so I had to do it. I absolutely had to. This is a definite kaiju style monster coming up out of the water. We needed that Pacific Rim reference in there somewhere. I loved that film. I hope you've enjoyed this video. As you can see, we've put some little finishing touches on here with those little grass tufts, those 2mm tufts. They're on the branches to help simulate some kind of wild growth and really give a nice feeling of being lived into this swamp. For me, they really made the whole piece stand out. I'm going to leave you with some finished shots of the entire army. This is the army we gave away for that Streamiversary event. This was all painted within the 2 days that we spent working on Twitch to celebrate our 2nd birthday, and I had an absolute blast. I want to say another humongous thank you to every single person that joined in throughout the 40 odd hours that we ended up streaming. It was insane. All of you guys are absolute bosses, and I literally couldn't do this without any one of you. You are all amazing, amazing people, and I feel privileged to have a community of people like yourselves around me. All of you, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. Peace out.